Hey, it's 7.4 video introduction to the compare contrast essay. This is going to be our summative assessment for the unit out there screaming, 100 summative points. So let's talk about what it is. Take some notes, please. A compare contrast essay is, in our case, going to be under exam conditions. And so that means that you'll be handwriting in class and you will leave your in-progress essay in the classroom each day until the last day of writing. It also means that you won't be able to use electronics during the exam. You will only be able to use your books and your packets and other paper materials from class. You will answer one prompt, and you get to choose in the actual paper 2 exam for IB, you are given 4 different prompts and you choose one. And so for the class, I'll give you some prompts and you will choose the one that you want to answer. So you will have time to prepare for that one particular prompt ahead of time. You're going to compare and contrast 2 works. And in our case, we're comparing and contrasting the memoir, Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward, to the anthology Out There Screaming, edited by Jordan Peele. And it's going to be important that you include detailed references to the works, focusing on drawing interesting conclusions about the 2 works, how they compare and contrast, what interesting, important meanings they convey. And then also that you're looking very critically at analyzing and evaluating choices of language and looking at how the various authors choose language and use different aspects of authorial choices to get their points across. There are 4 criteria for this essay, and they're the same as they've been all year. A, knowledge, understanding, and interpretation. B, analysis and evaluation. C, focus and organization. And D, use of language. For this particular compare-contrast essay, before I get to the structure, I wanted to show those of you who are testing with IB how much this is worth. It's worth 25% of your overall IB English score. And so you can see the other 2 pieces you have done are up here, the internal assessment in 11th grade, the higher level essay semester 1. And then 35% will be your paper 1, which is the guided literary analysis. And then the last 25% is the paper 2 comparative essay. Okay, what does it look like? We're going to use the block method for this compare-contrast essay. And there are other types of compare-contrast essays, but this works better for our particular type of compare-contrast essay. So the broad strokes here, you're going to have an introduction. You're going to talk about just one book first, either Men We Reaped or Out There Screaming. Then you're going to move on and talk about only the other book, either Out There Screaming or Men We Reaped. And then finally, you're going to talk about both books together and then end with a conclusion. The block method is one of the classic ways to organize a compare-contrast essay. It keeps your discussion of each text neatly grouped, which is especially helpful if you're working with 2 very different works or authors, which we are. And so it'll feel a little bit awkward at first when you're only talking about one text, and then especially when I think when you get to that second text. But you'll bring it all together when you talk about both books here in the evaluative paragraph. Let me tell you a little bit more about block method. This is how it's going to look. In your introduction, you're going to have a definition and example of the subject from the prompt. And then you're going to analyze, evaluate, and interpret book 1 in response to the prompt, analyze and interpret book 2 in response to the prompt, and then evaluate the section. You're going to look at the effects of similarities and differences, especially in terms of the use of language and authorial choices, in both texts, and then you'll have your conclusion. Now, as far as how many paragraphs this should be, it is really up to you. I think you're going to want to keep the introduction and conclusion short, though. You know, just one paragraph and under 100 words for each is great. The middle chunks might be longer. In the sample essay in your packet, you'll notice that this chunk is 2 paragraphs long. So they talk about just their first book for 2 full paragraphs, and then they move to the second book and again talk about it for 2 paragraphs. And what are they talking about? Well, they're responding to the prompt. They're analyzing, evaluating, and interpreting the book in response to the prompt. And so they do that. So that's a total of 4 paragraphs. And then finally, the evaluative section is 1 paragraph in that sample essay. And so yours might look similar, and it'll be about 1,000 words, maybe a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit longer. The introduction should include a definition of the key subject that's asked in the prompt. And so you need to determine what that key subject is when you brainstorm, when you get the prompts. The definition can be your own definition. It can be a little bit different from the person next to you, as long as you define it for the grader in your introduction. You'll also want to restate that key subject. Giving an example also really helps. And then you'll apply the prompt to the 2 texts you are analyzing. You're finally going to end with a thesis statement. The thesis statement needs to include language from the prompt because you're answering their prompt. You are answering their question, and that answer needs to be squarely focused on the prompt. Including language is the best way, from the prompt is the best way to do that. Then you'll need to include a debatable assertion that gets at the overall meaning of the 2 texts and, of course, answers the prompt. Finally, you'll also in that thesis statement need to have literary features, aspects of language, authorial choices, whatever you want to call them, that connect to your assertion. And the prompt in for the sample essay in your packet is this, and I don't think I included it in the packet, or if I didn't anyway, make sure you write it down. Find that essay right now, the sample essay, and write down the prompt. Some literary texts, although set in a particular place or time, convey ideas that are universal. In what ways is this true in the works you have studied? So you will not be answering this prompt, but this is the prompt the sample essay is answering. This is the thesis statement that they come up with, and again, this is in your packet. In The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, the universal idea of every human carrying the trauma of the past is shown through the motif of weight and things carried, while in Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward, the universal idea of narrative as a quest for understanding is highlighted through the motif of silence versus speech. So this student is writing on these 2 works. You, of course, will be writing on Men We Reaped and Out There Screaming. But you can see in this sample thesis statement that they have language from the prompt, universal idea, right? That is right here, you convey ideas that are universal. They have a debatable assertion, that's the blue, that answers the prompt. And then they have literary features, both motifs in this case. All right, moving on to the middle sections, and in the sample essay, they've got 2 paragraphs on book 1, 2 paragraphs on book 2, and then 1 paragraph on the evaluative section. The first part of the middle portion of their book focuses on this aspect of their thesis statement. The universal idea of every human carrying the trauma of the past is shown through the motif of weight and things carried, and it takes them 2 full paragraphs to do that. This next chunk is 2 more body paragraphs, and these are focused on the universal idea of narrative as a quest for understanding, highlighted through the motif of silence versus speech. And then finally, they have an evaluative section that focuses on looking at both works, evaluating the effects of the similarities and differences, especially regarding use of language and authorial choices in both books. Okay, the conclusion then is very short. This is their entire concluding paragraph. It is in your packet, so I will let you read it there, but it's restating the thesis statement and then leaving the reader with something to think about. Your essay is going to be graded on the Paper 2 rubric, which is a total of 30 marks. Criterion A is 10 marks. Criterion B is 10 marks. Criterion C is 5 marks. Criterion D is 5 marks. So A and B are worth twice as much as C and D for Paper 2. What does A look at? It's looking at knowledge, understanding, and interpretation. Look at the second bullet point. To what extent does the candidate make use of knowledge and understanding of the works to draw conclusions about their similarities and differences in relation to the question? So this is getting at how important the prompt is. The prompt is very important because it's going to be hard to score higher than 2 or 3 on this particular item if you are not responding directly to the prompt. How do you make sure to respond to the prompt? Well, you do some brainstorming on it. It is key to scoring well, and so you are going to want to spend some time doing some brainstorming on that prompt. Look at what the prompt is asking of you, like a literary analyst. It's getting at something that is important in terms of analysis of language, and so that's what you want to focus in on. That's what you want to hone in on. And you want to determine the subject of the prompt and define it. And there is a portion in this lesson where it's a must-do step where you are to brainstorm for one of the prompts, the one that you want to write about, and these directions are included there as well. So when you determine the subject, you're looking at really what is the key focus of the question and what do I need to define in it. In the sample prompt about the universal idea, that's exactly what they consider to be the subject, universal idea, and they define it and they include an example. And you'll want to do the same thing, and I think it's really helpful to include an example even before you talk about the books. So right away in the introduction, you can include an example of this key subject from the prompt that you have chosen, and after defining it, you'll include an example of it. Brainstorm a list of ideas and examples before you start writing and choose the best ones for each work. So you're going to be spending a lot of time thinking about the prompt, its subject, and what it means before you even think about the books. Then you're going to go to the books and you're going to think, okay, how is a universal idea conveyed in Men We Read? List as many examples as you can come up with. 5 would be great. Then move to the second book. How is a universal idea included in Out There Screaming? List at least 5. And then choose the best ones. Think about which ones are going to help you to score higher on criterion B, which is analysis and evaluation of language. And that's the hard one, right? And that's another 10-mark criterion. So doing that brainstorming is going to be really helpful as well. All right, those are the notes that I wanted you to take for this particular step in this lesson. The next step is to dredge back some memories from Men We Reaped. Find your book and your packet, and it's a should do that you take some notes in your Out There Screaming packet on Men We Reaped. And especially now that you've read Out There Screaming, you can start thinking about, okay, what are some of these similarities? What can I focus on? The next must do for this lesson is to do the brainstorming for the prompt. So you are going to choose which prompt you want to answer. They are in the packet. And you're going to follow the steps in the brainstorming must do on Men We Reaped and Out There Screaming. And then you, as an aspire to do, can outline your compare, contrast essay using the block method. I've included an outline template in the packet. And then after the outline template, you'll see the sample essay. So perhaps you want to read the sample essay next Maybe that's the first thing to do before you dredge up men we reaped. I don't know. Whatever order you want to do. But the other must do for this lesson is to actually brainstorm and start crafting, start preparing that essay that you are going to then write in class over the course of 3 days. All right, good luck to you. Please tell me what you need from me. I am here to help you.